as the title of this video suggests, today I will be spookifying my OCs. So first of all, I'm very sorry that this video took so long to come out. I ended up creating so much work for myself because I had the idea for what I wanted this video to turn out like, and well, I committed to it very much so, and that ended up with lots and lots more work than I anticipated. So for context, originally I was just going to spookify 3 OCs, but then I had the bright idea of, why don't I do my whole main cast? And that ended up with 9 characters in total. I do not regret it though, it was very fun. And in light of that, just a little disclaimer I guess, because this is obviously like a spooky video, there will be some very slight hints of blood and a little bit of like bones showing, but nothing gory. So to start off, I decided to begin with my main cast. So that's 6 characters in total. They are for my fantasy OC world, and I've had them for quite a couple years now. The very first one, Scarlett, I think, yeah, she's the only girl in the group, just because it kind of ended up that way, honestly. It naturally ended up with her as being the only girl because I ended up just making more male characters after her. Like, no specific reason. And yeah, so 6 members. Scarlett, the first one, she came about when I was something like 13 years old, so a long time ago. And admittedly her first design was a little bit, I guess the right word for it would be a little bit risque. 13-year-old me obviously watched a lot of anime and did not really know anything about good design. I basically just, you know, everything that you consume you put down on the page, and that's what I put down on the page. And her first design was not very it didn't tell the best character story. It wasn't inappropriate per se, but it was more, I don't know how to describe it. I guess you could say it's very much in the theme of female fantasy armor, except she wasn't wearing armor because her class is a rogue, and it was just unnecessary. But anyway, I'm getting off track. So Scarlett, she basically came from the idea of, hey, what if I made a half orc, half elf? What would that look like? And so she was born. So as I've just said, Scarlett is half orc, half elf, and that means that her skin is purple, as you'll see later on. But yeah, just to get all of their races out of the way, the first character that I'm lining here is Jiko. He is originally a vampire, but for his spookification, I made him into like a little devil because I thought his fangs and his obviously black and red sort of color scheme going on fit really well already. So honestly, just adding the horns, the wings, and the tail just tied it all together. I didn't have to do much with him to change up his design. And yeah, he's a vampire. And in my OC world, vampires are a little bit different from traditional vampires, but I haven't fleshed out all the details just yet. So the first major thing that I changed about them was that vampires can go in the sun, but it's more like they can build up tolerance so that they can go into the sun. For example, a vampire who's never seen the sun, if they just stepped out into broad daylight, they would probably sizzle and they might even burn. But a vampire who's had gradual exposure or has exposure since they're very young is perfectly, well, generally perfectly fine in the sun. That doesn't mean that they're at full strength though. A vampire in the sun just, it becomes weakened. So they're quite vulnerable at that time. And yeah, Jiko is a vampire that has been in the sun a couple times. He travels with the group, so obviously if he was more nocturnal, that would be pretty inconvenient for him, but he does suffer the after effects of it. And the character that I'm lining now is Scarlett, like I was just talking about. So for her design, I wanted to go for something really different because her original design is sort of very, I guess it's a lot more practical because she's more of a rogue / hand-to-hand kind of fighter, and she wears trousers most of the time, pants that is, and a tube top, which isn't the most practical for fighting because, well, I'm sure if there are any ladies watching this, they all know wearing a tube top while you're fighting, while you're moving around at all, can be really risky. But it's my OC world, and in my OC world, tube tops do not slide, and they're pretty firm, they're pretty fixed. So yeah, she wears a tube top in her original design. But here I wanted to make her look more girly, actually, because I don't think I've ever given her an outfit that looks really girly, and I wanted to just change her up a bit. You know, it's spookification, just making her design completely different from what it originally is. And yeah, that's what I did. I put her in a cute little dress, and I figured out a lot of the details for her design later, actually, but that's what I started with. And now the character that I'm lining here, his name is Acoris. So he is a sheep demi-human. So in my OC world, there's a difference between demi-humans and animal shapeshifters. And I think you can infer the difference between them. But demi-humans, they have animalistic characteristics in varying degrees. And for Acoris, he is, well, a sheep. So he has sheep ears, but obviously it's covered by the pumpkin on his head. And actually originally I gave him hooves as well, but I decided to change that for this particular design just because I am skill issued and it would be very difficult for me to try and incorporate the kind of shape language I wanted to if he had hooves. Next character is Azalea, and he's actually another one of my older OCs. He came about, I think, not too long after Scarlett. He came about as just like a random sketch of some guy with sort of... Oh yeah, I remember. It was this alcohol marker, and the alcohol marker color was called salmon pink. But it wasn't really salmon pink, it was a different shade, so it ended up being his skin tone. And yeah, I gave him pink hair, glasses, and blue overalls, and that was him. That was my first ever rendition of him. And later on, I obviously touched him up, and he became a real character for me. And he is one of two twins that I'm also lining. Azalea and Lavender, they're twins. Azalea and Lavender, they both come from, well, they're both humans, and they both come from a noble family in one of the nations I have in my little OC world. Azalea was cast out of his family because he could do magic, and in that particular nation, magic is taboo. And Lavender was kept because he doesn't have a very high aptitude for magic. And this all gets explained later. Somewhere along the story, I'll keep little tidbits so that this kind of thing is explained better. Because I'm a fan of sort of showing you why things happen the way they do, rather than just telling everyone outright exactly what it is. But yeah. They're two twins, they're very different. They had an estranged relationship for quite a while, but they reconciled recently, like from the perspective of the start of the story. But then Lavender dipped, he ran away, and now it's up to Azalea to find him and bring him back. And that's like his whole reason for setting off on a little adventuring journey, actually. That's how it starts. And this next character is called Daescel. He's a character that I planned for them to sort of meet a little bit later. Not too late, but still within the first section of the story, but later than everyone else. I think he's one of the last characters that they'll meet. And he is primarily a swordsman. I'm quite certain I'd want him to have other skills as well, but they would not be proficient as he is with the sword. And what kind of sword that he uses, I still haven't 100% got it down. I'm still juggling between a couple of different Japanese swords that I can't name off the top of my head, but I have a couple, because they're all different, and they're all really fascinating, so I need to do more research on them. So between that and between a two-handed longsword, because I think I've always wanted him to use a longsword, or two. And yeah, it's between those Japanese swords and that longsword, which I'll figure out at some point. My friend, who's a bit of a history nerd, actually, whenever I mentioned, oh yeah, I think maybe he'll have a katana, she'll be like, katana or this other Japanese sword, which looks similar, but it's very different. And I'd be like, I need to do more research. And the research still hasn't happened. I think I'll probably ask her about it later on again, just because I need more information and I don't know where to get that information from. But yeah, I wanted to change up his design, and I wanted to give him sort of like a demon samurai kind of look. Just because it is quite different from his original design, but it does play into the main themes of his original. So back again to Jiko. Sorry I'm jumping back and forth, but I wanted to change it up since obviously I started with lining the characters first, and I thought it would make sense to go from character to character as I'm doing them. But now in this part of the process, I am coloring them in. And I colored him in grey first, just because it's easier to witness against the white background. And then I color him in like the colors of the design, obviously. So yeah, Jiko, like I said, vampires are a little bit different in my world. They can step into the sun, but that's only with a certain amount of sun tolerance. And obviously their primary source of nutrients is blood, but I was thinking of allowing them to have a little bit of, I guess, normal human food, but it might make them sick in some cases, and it's not very good for them. It's like eating junk food all the time. Basically, that's the effect. Okay, moving on again to Scarlett. So for her design, I really like how it turned out, and I really like how it turned out like that just because I winged it the whole way through, basically. I just thought, oh, what if I added this? Or what if I added that? Would this look good? Or what would this look like? Okay, maybe I should change that. Something like that. It was basically just, oh, let me add these little things to her design and see how it turns out. And I'm no character designer. I need to get better at character design, but I really do enjoy this sort of process of work, just sort of seeing where my mind goes and where it takes me, where my sort of raw creativity, whatever my brain cooks up, let me put it down on the page or down on the canvas. And that's basically exactly what happened with her design for the little spookification. And honestly, it's my favorite design. I love how the dress turned out, what I did with the hat. Most of my designs here were basically purely off of my brain juice. That was the reference, my brain. But I did look up some witch hats on Pinterest, and I found a few with this little lace design off the brim. And I obviously magpied it, as an artist does. And yeah, that's how the lace came about. But I knew from the get-go that I did want something like bows in her design. And honestly, I was quite a little bit worried that I had too much blue, so that's why I added all those gold accents as well. And same with the brim, honestly. I was worried I was adding way too much blue, so I tried to darken it a little bit and tried to give at least a bit of contrast with the gold. But I think it turned out quite nicely. So now to Acoris again. I really like him as a character, honestly. He's my sweetest character that I've made. He's just a really nice guy. He's lovely. And I've featured him on a thumbnail before. But I wanted to give him a spooky design that sort of gives the same feel as his original. Just very, I guess whimsical would be the word. Very friendly, very, very sweet. Even though a little spirit like him might look a little bit, maybe mischievous, yeah. But it still has the same sort of playful energy as his original design does. So I really like that. And I added little wisps, just, it's a bit lore related, where Acoris can speak with spirits. So I kept that in. Okay, now to Azalea. I thought, off the top of my head, let's make him into a zombie. Let's turn his skin green, because green is Azalea's favorite color. And I thought it would be extremely fitting if I made him green instead. And in light of him being a zombie, I grayed out his clothes basically, just wash them out. Because his theme is like, he's a zombie that's crawled out of the earth. Because he is very much a plant guy. He loves plants, they grow on him, he uses plant magic, so I thought it was really fitting to make him a zombie, a plant zombie even, and a zombie that came out of the earth. As for Lavender, in my story, he struggles a lot with his mental psyche, with his mental psyche, and he ends up sort of getting out of control, and his mind sometimes feels like it's not his own. And this descent is quite gradual, but I thought I would play on this a little bit with the whole mad doctor, sort of mad scientist trope. So that's what I did for him. He does have deeper eye bags than he does canonically, but yeah. And so for Daescel, I started coloring off with his skin tone this time instead of grays, because his skin tone has a similar effect. And if you can see at the top, I did little sketches of him beforehand without the mask on, just because I wanted to sketch his beautiful face again, because it's been so long since I have, and I do not regret it. He is one of my most gorgeous OCs, just objectively good looking, and I'm quite proud of this craft, how I've crafted him. And yeah, so I started off playing with the colors. I knew I definitely wanted red in the robes, but I also wanted to keep in some grays just to balance it all out. So I thought, yep, trust the process, start with the red, see where it takes you, and add in other necessary colors. And yeah, I thought, okay, I already put in like a smoky tattoo on his left arm, so I'll put some smoke / black flames rising up as well, just to give it more contrast and just to make the design feel a little more cohesive. Also added flowers because I love flowers, and I think they make everything look a little better. Also, I'm honestly not sure where the beads came from, but I felt like the design did something, so they were that something. But I'm not entirely sure on their significance, honestly. I see them in a lot of similar designs to Daescel's, and I admit haven't done any due diligence to research where they come from. But as an artist, I pick out little elements of design that I like, and I have implemented them. So that's why they are there. And then at this point, I was just thinking about the presentation, and it was done. That was my first lineup of characters. And below, I'll have them named as well, from left to right. But yeah, I went straight into doing the next set of characters, the next 3 set of characters. So at this point, I ended up switching to Clip Studio Paint for the first time actually. This is the first time I was ever using it because I really wanted to use it for some of the features that it had that Krita just did not. Don't get me wrong, I love Krita with all my heart, but I wanted to try it out and see what Clip Studio was all about. So yeah, I got my little membership. It gives you, I think, 3 months free, and that's how I started trying it out. So that's also part of the reason why it took me so long to post this video, because I was also learning Clip Studio Paint at the same time and fumbling about. So these 3 characters, the first one is obviously Ikazuki, and I thought, okay, I want to make her a vampire countess. And my initial design for her was very different. It was very much more sort of gothic, and she was gonna be in like a big puffed out black dress with lots of frills, and her hair was gonna be up, and she was gonna look just how maybe you'd classically think a vampire countess would look like. But obviously that didn't happen. And I ended up giving her that design instead, just because I thought it suited her a lot better. I thought in my mind, I wanted to give her little bat wings, so I did. And I wanted the design to suit her personality, so I did do just that. And this next character is not mine, actually. It's one of my dear friends. This is Moss. And in my friend's words, Moss is a cosmic entity similar to Cthulhu, but less powerful. She got bored of doing nothing, so she decided she wanted to hang out with humans, but her normal form would drive people insane if they saw it, so she dug up some corpses and Frankensteined herself a meat suit to hide in. And that is Moss. Honestly, I love this character concept, and I love her design very, very much. It's just so fun to draw. And I love the idea of, oh, my original form drives people insane, so I have to like make a body for myself. I love that so much. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. Before I even knew Moss's actual overview properly, I already thought, what if I made her a sea witch? Because originally Moss had a really punkish design. Because she somehow got sucked into punk culture, because she obviously has a really unique looking appearance. And yeah, I thought, why don't I make her a sea witch? I think that would really suit her. And I think I was right. I think it does suit her. This next character is also not mine. It's another friend of mine's. Wow, 2 dear friends have their OCs being drawn by me. Amazing. So this is Anneliese. And typically she does not look so pitiful. This look was only because of the design that I wanted to give her. I wanted to make her into a corpse bride, which somehow does fit with her lore, actually, with the general overview that my friend gave me for her. So she's 27 years old, born in Germany, raised by her grandmother and indifferent parents, and moved to America as a 10-year-old. And I think originally this was a Call of Cthulhu OC, which is a similar setting to Moss, I think. But yeah, she actually ended up getting really developed and having a wonderful lover as well, which I'll get into later. So going back to Ikazuki, because now I'm coloring her in, I really wanted to change up her skin tone to feel more drained, more like the blood got sucked out of her as she turned into a vampire. So to do that, I first started off with her original skin tone, because I thought I am not the best colorist, so I'll start off with what I know. And that's exactly what I did, because Ikazuki normally has a warm, very warm skin tone and very saturated colors, because that's how I created her. And I played around with blending modes I mean, and just tonal curves too. And eventually I settled on what you see now, which I'm quite happy with because it didn't really change the light value of her skin tone, but it definitely made it look more washed out. Same with her hair, which is exactly what I was looking for. Because obviously as the blood drains from you, the color goes from you as well. And instead of her signature cyan pupils, I gave her very, very bright red eyes. And obviously a choker and the little blood jewels and little bat wings, because it was an essential part of the design that I needed her to have. It was honestly everything. It was the concoction in my mind that dictated why her design would be like this. Honestly, the way this design turned out isn't exactly what I had in mind. I'm not necessarily unhappy with it, but I feel like I could have given it a little more. Like I said, it's not that bad. I still like it, but it's a little more plain than I originally intended it to be. But I guess, oh well, it is what it is. Overall, I still very much like how it turned out, even if it's not as well as I intended. Anyway, so back on to Moss. So yeah, Moss has a really unconventional design, and actually that's what I really love about my friend's designs. She always creates such interesting creatures, such interesting looking people and creatures. I love them. So yeah, Moss has bright green skin, which obviously I think it's a bit brighter than what a corpse would look like, but hey, she's a magical or mythical entity, so she can have bright green skin if she so wants. And I noticed that she doesn't have any ears in her design, but she does have a shaved head with green hair, and it does work really well. Usually, honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of shaved heads on characters or even green hair all the time, but she makes it work so well that I can't help but like it. And for this design, I thought, what if she had tentacles sort of coming out of her back? At first I thought, what about an octopus? Something like that, but I don't think it would fit. So I thought like having it come out of her back would be even cooler. And you know, just the little mist at the bottom as well, and her doing her sea witchy magic. I really like that. So now back onto Anneliese. So as I said, she's 27. She moved to America at 10 years old, and she got pregnant out of wedlock at about 18 to 19 years old. Was terrified by the prospect of being a mother, so she left her daughter at an orphanage. She worked odd jobs as waitressing and cleaning, etc. until she was noticed by an entertainment agency, and now works as an entertainer/singer. But is also involved in more illegal things on the side. And by that she means she's an accomplice for assassinations, which I found really fascinating actually. To be honest, I haven't heard that much about Anneliese, but I have seen her and her lover interact a lot, her lover Vertin, which is made by the friend who made Moss. And I love her design. I loved how she looked when she was crying, as morbid as that sounded, so I thought she would suit being a corpse bride so well. And I was right, she looks stunning. So yeah, here's the lineup for all three of them. Overall, I really loved how they turned out, to be honest. And well, right after that, I got right into creating the thumbnails for the thumbnail of this video, which I also had the amazing bright idea that I wanted to do a full illustration. So I started thumbnailing it because obviously doing it just off my brain juices doesn't always end well. So at least having a tiny plan beforehand, even if that changes later, I think it's good to have. So, you know, I did it in tiny little blocks, and I originally planned to do 4, but I ended up with 2. And I first tried out using 3D assets, 3D models for the poses because, well, obviously it's one of the assets that Clip Studio has. and I thought I'd try it out. But I'll be real with you, it did not work out. I tried so many times and I just could not get Ikazuki's face looking right from the 3D model, and it kind of ruined the initial bits of the process because I kept redoing her face over and over and over again and I couldn't get it right for so long. But obviously I did in the end, like we're here now. But it took me way too long, and obviously I'm not using 3D models right if using them gives me such grief. But I'll probably revisit it at a later time. Just not this time. I'm not used to the program enough to be able to really use 3D models correctly. And honestly, I think their appeal for me lies in if it's a really, really tough pose, because then I think they're really helpful. But if it's something that I can already do on my own, I think it honestly hinders my process rather than helps me, because I end up sort of sticking to the guidelines a little too much, and the guidelines don't fit well with how my art style is. It sort of makes things feel a little too stiff and too awkward. So yeah. I think I also mentioned before that I'm not the biggest fan of 3D models, especially when I'm learning how to draw at the same time, and I still stick by that. But that doesn't mean that they're not a decent resource to use if you wanted to. Like I said, if the pose is really difficult, I don't think there's anything wrong with using 3D models, but if it's something you can do on your own, I think you should do it on your own. You know, get in all the practice and everything, so you get used to just doing things on your own. But yeah. So I skipped the finished sketch in recording this and started lining everything. And honestly, this piece took a lot longer than I expected, just because, well, I was learning. Like I said, I've been learning how to do my process and everything. So yeah, I just kept lining. And right now I'm lining Moss. And honestly, I think she turned out the best out of all the characters there. I'm sorry. She honestly looks so stunning. She blew me away when I drew her. I thought, damn, I drew that? It's just her shape language. I love the way I spookified her. Her design is just gorgeous. And yeah, I think out of all of them, she was my favorite to draw, because her shape language meant I enjoyed drawing her. It meant that drawing her and looking at her when I finished drawing her was really satisfying for me. I don't know if any of you can relate, but sometimes you draw something and you think, yeah, I totally cooked with that. And this is one of those times. Okay, I've yapped on for a long time, so I'm gonna let this speed paint run in the back, and I will jump in with a few little bits of commentary here and there. But like I said, this is the speed paint, well, the bigger speed paint portion of the video, so you can draw along if you want or not. You can also watch if you want or not. But yeah, I'll stop yapping for now. So honestly, when I started coloring, I did not have much of a clue what was going on. And I just thought, okay, what if I blocked out the base colors first and see how it went from there? And obviously, I think I overestimated my skill with coloring straight on, because even though it didn't look that bad from the base colors, I really wanted it to have a different feel than it already did. And I tried out different gradients and different ways of doing it, blocked out some colors, and it was just looking so muddy, and I was just feeling so disappointed. And then eventually I just gave up and thought, nah, I'm starting off again, and I'm doing this in grayscale this time. And honestly, I'm so surprised it worked out so well, actually. So I learned sort of how to use different values in different lighting situations. I'm still not a master at it, and I'll get to it, actually, eventually. But yeah, I thought if I started off in grayscale, I could change the way the colors interacted with tonal curves and just tweak it later. But I wanted to get the values out of the way so that all the characters had the kind of shadows that I was looking for. And that's what I did. I started off with Moss because obviously she's the star of the show in this illustration. And I just saw where it took me. So when I finally decided to add color, I thought I'd do the background first, just a little bit to get it out of the complete grayscale sort of feeling. And then I experimented with how I wanted to get color onto the canvas actually. So I tried out different blending modes, and honestly none of them worked out for me. They all looked really washed out or really wrong, honestly. The colors didn't come out how I wanted. So I thought, okay, let me just do it straight onto the grayscale and use tonal curves. And it worked out perfectly. Like, it actually worked out amazingly. So that's how I added color to the canvas. I did it in grayscale first, then used tonal curves to change the base color, and then selected certain parts of the drawing, and then used tonal curves again to change the color again. And then afterwards, you'll see later, but I tweaked it later with like another normal layer on top, just to add the colors that I couldn't get out of the tonal curve. Just like the red in Ika's eyes, I got that later. But yeah, honestly, I quite enjoyed doing that. And just for some bits where I didn't want to get rid of the rendering that I already did, I added another layer on top, clipped it, and put on a color layer, but with the grayscale. So the value would be kept and I could change the color. But I don't always recommend doing this because it can come out really washed out looking just because of the values that you use. So I only did it for some parts where I absolutely thought I want to keep the same value intact. And honestly, this whole illustration was a ton of trial and error, just messing around, seeing what I could do, seeing how I could make it better or make it look good. And that's honestly it. That's how I work. Just seeing if something works out, and if it doesn't, I'll try something else. And honestly, that's why it took so long to create this piece. This piece took me a total of about 9 hours, which is really long for me. Usually it would take me less time. But I tried really hard. And I tried really hard whilst also trying to learn a new program at the same time and figuring out what my process was, because I don't have one set in stone. It sort of changes with every illustration, really, just because I still haven't got much of a clue of what I'm doing. And honestly, that's fine. You know, if try things out, mess around a bit, see if this works. If it doesn't, move on. If it does, great, keep it for a bit. And maybe you'll want to change it later, or maybe you won't. I know a lot of artists sort of struggle with having a set process, and honestly, I think it's a universal struggle as well. But as long as you enjoy what you do and make the process as fun as possible for you, then I think you're winning. Like, even though rendering and doing all this isn't my favorite thing, just honestly the grayscale and then adding the colors later sort of made it easier for me because I didn't have to think too hard. Well, actually no, I thought really hard, but I guess once you've done the grayscale, the coloring on top is sort of easy. You just switch up with the tonal curves, select a few bits, switch those up, add some bits that you couldn't add before, and there you go. There you have it. And yeah, that's basically all I did. I just messed around. But this illustration was fun. It's not my best illustration, but it sort of showcases what my skill can currently do the best, I think. And I know I'll get better from here. I still enjoyed it very much. It was definitely an experience. But I don't think I'll go this far for a video thumbnail ever again. Unless it's like really important, but it took a lot out of me, to be honest. But like I said, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. I'm quite happy that I was able to do this, and I'll definitely do it better next year. For sure. And I definitely won't give myself as much work as I have this year. And I will definitely post on time this time. I'm so sorry it took like 12 long days to post this from my idea. But yeah, here's the finished thing. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.